mobility complex that I often do before my training because it addresses a lot of the areas that tend to be common restrictions, as well as it sets you up with good mobility to go into your training. Typically this would follow some activation, which I'm not going to go through, so I'm just doing the mobility component of it. The first one is hip flexor stretch. So my favorite way to do that is with a band to assist it. You're going to go ahead and position the band just under your butt. Go into a half kneel position. You're going to make sure that you're in a bit of a posterior tilt. So tuck your tailbone under, and you're going to have your whatever knee is down, that glute is going to fire, and you're going to go ahead and push your hips forward. You should feel a pretty strong stretch in the front of your thigh of the knee that's down. Hold for 2-3 seconds. Make sure you're breathing. Relax, and go ahead and repeat. So as you relax into that stretch, you can go ahead and hold it for a little bit longer. It does also help to provide a little bit of traction in the hip joint, which is often needed for those with really, really tight hip flexors. And it's a really good thing for a lot of people. A lot of people, when they stretch their hip flexors, they don't really engage their core at all. So because the band's kind of pulling you forward, it's going to force you to stabilize while you're getting that stretch off the hip flexor joint there. Off the hip joint there. Next up is a stretch for the back of the legs, specifically more for the ankle. Ankle restrictions are very common. So this one is called a rocking ankle mode. You're going to position yourself in a single leg downward dog-like position. You're going to drive your heel to the floor and then bring your knee to the floor and repeat that series. You should feel a good stretch through the back of your calf, maybe a little bit into the hamstring. The goal is to be coming in and out of dorsiflexion, which is a common pattern we see in a lot of our training, specifically the squat. If you don't feel enough of a stretch, go ahead and move your feet closer towards your hands and shorten that distance. If you find it's too strong, then do the opposite, move it further away. Again, about 10 per side should suffice. Next one is a pike arch. Pike arches do a few different things. They're going to provide you with a good stretch through the back of your body, back of your legs, as well as is a really good mobility exercise for your thoracic spine, as well as a little bit into the lumbar spine. So how you set up for this one is very similarly to the ankle mode. It's just going to go into a push-up position, go back into a downward dog, and then touch one toe, then the other toe, and then you're going to drop your hips. Your goal is to open up a little bit through your hip flexors without sagging at your hips. So you should still be contracted through your core. We usually start with people having them just look over each shoulder and then repeat. Your goal is to not really have to reposition your feet if you don't have to, but obviously if you have to, that's totally okay. If you want to progress this, you can go ahead and bring one leg through, and then you'll also get a bit of a stretch through the side of your leg and through your QL. And then you would do the same on the opposite side. So that's a pike arch. 5 to 10 of those is good. Directly flowing into that, I usually go into Spiderman lunges. And Spiderman lunges, there's a few different variations with these, but my favorite one is to have your hands down on the inside. You're going to rotate towards the knee that's up. Make sure that you stop once your hand's in line with the ceiling instead of just flailing back, so it is a controlled rotation. And then you want to pull your toes back. And so typically I alternate sides. For those of you who are a little bit tighter through your hips, you might need to bend your back knee. That's totally okay. If not, then go ahead and keep your legs straight. Usually I'll do 5 of these per side, and then I'll drop it into a low Spiderman lunge. So the elbow's going to be to the floor, repeating the same sequence, except I'm going to do 5 consecutive on one side. Your goal is to reach up to the ceiling, and then eventually make sure you can try to touch your elbow to the floor. You might not be able to do that your first day. From there, the flow, I usually go into a lunge with rotation. And for this one, you want one foot directly behind the other. Your hands are going to be on either side of your foot, and your knee's going to deke around your elbow, and your back knee's going to bend. So you're coming into external rotation, or your knee's coming outward, and your hips rotating as your back knee drops to the floor, that way. Usually I do about 5 to 10 of these on each side, and then the same thing on the other side, that way. The next one is going to be standing lat stretch. I like to use a band for this. If you don't have access to being able to tie a band up to any sort of surface. You can just hold on to a doorway or a cage and you should be able to get a good stretch. The band's going to provide a little bit more dynamic stabilization in conjunction with a stretch, so it is a really good thing to do. So for this one, you're just going to keep a nice neutral spine. You're going to be reaching forward as you pull your hips back, and you should ideally feel a stretch through the back of your shoulders and through your lats this way, and then you want to breathe into it. Typically with each breath that you take, you should feel a little bit of an increase in stretch. So for this one, I do about a 20-second hold a couple times per side. That's my mobility series that I typically like to do prior to my workouts. You should give it a try and let me know what you think.